My simple summary of who I am, I'm a research medium, as mentioned, with voices across the veil. I've been working with them for quite a number of years, maybe since 2014 or 16. Time is a blur these days. I'm an author of the books and self-paced video lessons of the 4-month Soul Psychic Healer certification program, which is a life development, channeling or intuitive development, clairvoyance and healing development, and then finally mediumship development that is done on your own. And it's not in my bio, but I will be mentioning, I also do have a Facebook group called Mediumship Development Circle Online. And there people can exchange readings, assuming that you've had some training. So that's my training. I do one-on-one, mentoring with that, but the meat of my work is really in other areas, working with clients. That's what I enjoy, and I enjoy the research mediumship. So before I was into the psychic realm, well, let me restate that. I always was into the psychic realm because I was born into a psychic household and did see spirit as a child, but really ignored it and pursued more monetary or materialistic goals. I worked in corporate America for the largest software company in the world, calling on global corporations. I also pursued a career as an actor. I have an English literature degree. And little did I know that all of this, my orientation, my natural propensity or interest in spiritual, psychic, and creative subjects would ultimately blend. But I do believe that the creative process is very much a part of the mediumship process because our imagination is the template, the palette, the canvas that spirit works from. And of course you may say, well, I didn't make that up when I got that message. No, but spirit is overriding your creative mind when they're working with you. So I'd like to speak a little bit about, and hopefully this will spur some questions, but I'd like to speak a little bit about something I prepared and something that I think is kind of exciting. You go to classes and they teach you or they run you through exercises, and it doesn't, it's not one size fits all for mediumship. And the only way to really learn is to allow spirit to work with you, teach you directly in your mediumship sessions. And in that process, through times when I failed, and there have been many, we all know that failure is part of a success process. So I did learn a few things here and there from that. And of course, I've had some successes, but it's the failures that taught me a lot. So one of the things I realized is preparing the sitter. I'm going to go over the 5 right now, and then I'm going to go into a little more detail. But preparation of the sitter is just as important as you developing, because the sitter, for me anyway, and I've seen it in other places, is just as important as the medium in making that wonderful connection. That and the soul in spirit. So we got a 3-way conversation going. Soul and spirit has to learn how, and the soul and spirit has to be willing and all of that. The sitter has to learn. So there's things to tell the sitter, ways for you to secretly prepare and open the sitter, which I will go into in a moment. The second thing is enhancing the meditation process. There's we all know to meditate, or most of you should know that by now, but there's a few things I've thrown into my meditation that I find have enhanced my acuity, which is the next thing to learn is acuity. How do we get that incisive mental focus? Mental focus is important, but how do we make it even more acute? And I'll talk a little bit about that. Be prolific. The more you work in doing discernments, the better you get. And what comes to mind is James von Prague. I once heard him say, it took him, I don't know, 10 years of sitting in a circle before he felt he was ready. Maybe it was 9 years or 8 years, but about 10 years before he felt he was ready to work with clients. Now, I wouldn't say that. I actually just threw myself in, and I'll talk about what I did to get that experience because it's critical. And then another thing is getting training from spirit. That's another little thing to add into. Don't think that you have to just go to people on earth to learn. What a concept. Spirit can teach us. Yes, and they do. So these are 5 things. I just decided on 5 was a good number because that's what Spirit kept telling me today when I was doing this outline. So how do we open up the sitter? I just want to go a little bit into why it's so important that the sitter not be closed. And there's various signs of the sitter being closed. I don't know if any of you have seen the recent documentary on Netflix called Surviving Death. If you haven't, it's a good one. You might want to check it out. But in there, there's, in the episode I was watching, there's some person who keeps wanting to know. He has to know. And he has one thing he wants the medium to provide for him, depending on the sitting. But every time he has a sitting, he wants one thing from the medium. And there was an exceptional storyline where he's in a closed circle with the full trance medium, Nicole de Haas. She's famous. She's in the Netherlands, and she's known for her trance mediumship. And they go into how she trains and all this. So they finally have a circle, and he's this little guy. He has to know certain things, but he doesn't say anything. He keeps his mouth shut during this sitting, during the circle. And she goes into a trance. And speaking of, acting, she's like completely he's getting the voice of the little girl, what the little girl said, and very specific things in the voices of the deceased, different people. So when they're done, they show this guy, this sitter, who wants to know just one thing. He says, well, he wasn't that good. She didn't bring forth what I needed. So this has happened to me. And I'm sure if any of you work a lot or have worked, it probably will happen to you. So one of the signs of the sitter not being open is wanting one specific thing. So that's one of the things I educate the sitter on is do not ask for one thing. Be open, because the things you will get will be far superior than if you were closed to getting only one thing. That's when the real magic happens. So that's what I do. I have it on my website when they're booking, and I'm very particular. They have to believe in me. That's another thing. And they have to believe in spirit. They can't come in as a skeptic, because as far as they're open, as far as they're believing in you and in spirit, that's as much as you can get them through. It's not like they show you on detective stories on TV that you're going to suddenly make a breakthrough. The more open you are, the more you get. So what do? I have videos of me doing live readings, right? Unrehearsed readings, like from my radio show. I used to videotape them, and I have them on my website. And I also have a lot of testimonials and even reviews on Google. So the more you can get of that, the more credibility you have, the better your results will be with a sitter, because the theorem, again, here is the more open you are, the sitter, the more open the sitter is, the more they will get. A couple other little things. I always give them instructions like be in a quiet meditative state, ask for your loved ones to come through beforehand. I also always allow spirit to lead the session instead of forcing things. So for example, if a sitter wants one person, only one person, and that's always the case, I have to educate them to tell them, you may want your husband, but his mother in spirit may come in first. She's opening the portal. She's been there longer and has more facility and capability to prepare the energy pathway so that your loved one, the one you want, can come through. So the more you follow what spirits lined up for you, and they do line up the souls, the more you will have success in your session. So that means just don't fight it, just go with it. Let's see here. Grief is a big problem. Of course, it's a problem. It's a terrible thing. And of course, I always am very empathetic with my sitters. But if they are in a very strong state of grief, it will be really hard. There's so many reasons for that. One of them is the energy around them will prevent the portal from opening or hinder it, greatly hinder it. They may want so much, to get that connection, and they may have unrealistic expectations about what that connection would be like, or they may be in the denial stage of grief, which means they're projecting denial into the mediumship. And no matter what you say, they're going, no, no, no. It's very subtle, right? Very subtle. It took me a long time to figure this out, because when I listen to professional mediums talk about this or prepare sitters, or even in classes, I didn't hear it this way, or I didn't get it. So I'm sharing this with you. I do have ways for clearing my clients so that I'm not dealing with that situation. And one of the things is I have on my website when they're booking, I don't see me if it's been less than a year. I know there's a long time. And I have brought in souls that have just passed 2 weeks ago, a week ago, they've come right in. But just to be safe, I put that there 1 year. It's a guideline. The other thing is I look to see if they've seen a lot of mediums, the ones that are really in grief, they keep popping from medium to medium to medium to medium. I state on my booking page, if you've seen more than one medium in the last year to see one particular soul, you're not a good candidate. It means you're still in the grieving process. I'm being severe with this, but it's better safe than sorry as far as I'm concerned, because I want to give people the best that's there for them, not the worst. So that's basically a summary of preparing the client. Now, in terms of meditation, I was doing a mindful meditation beforehand and a prayer and all that, and that was good. And one day I just stumbled on something. It's a kind of meditation that's well known, which is focusing the eye on an object. But I found that when I used that kind of meditation of eye focus, my mind was more acute. I was able to get better perception when I was connecting with the other side. So focusing, an eye focus is good. I've also heard some people use hemisync meditations. I think there are some on hemisync. They're specifically designed for mediumship. There's a pretty well-known medium, I can't think of her name right now, maybe somebody else will know what that is, who's actually created a 4-part course on hemisync using. Basement. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. So that's for acute. I'm using an eye focus, and it enhances my acuity. Being acute is very important. So how do we enhance that besides the eye focus? Well, for one, I don't do drugs anyway, but I don't take a lot of alcohol or drugs the night before. I get a good night's sleep, or the best night's sleep I can get. You try to eat a very plain diet, not too much food, so you can sleep well. Maybe get some rigorous exercise before you're doing mediumship. And something I think is a little novel, which I stumbled upon, I started to do research on mushrooms, medicinal and therapeutic mushrooms. I'm not talking about hallucinogenic ones or going on a trip, although that can be helpful. But I started to take a mushroom blend that says it will enhance your focus, your energy, your mental acuity. And in the research I did, apparently when we do take certain mushrooms, in particular lion's mane, and even more exceptionally with psilocybin, which is not legal in most of the United States now, you're all in different countries, so it's different rules elsewhere. But if just a small dose of psilocybin, what happens is the different parts of the brain start to sync. They start to sync. And if you've done any research on the psychic phenomenon, you will learn that it's almost like having an epileptic fit, which means the brain hemispheres are syncing. So, not that I'm in an epileptic fit, but I'm getting more activity in the brain from disparate parts connecting. So that enhances your acuity. Okay, so it's just a couple of ideas. Another idea, this fourth secret, is to be prolific in your discernments. Do as much as you can. As I mentioned, I have a Facebook group called Mediumship Development Circle Online, and it's basically for reading exchange. Pinned to the top of that group is a reading exchange. You just post yourself there and you can get to work with sitters. I don't put a lot of tips there. Not that I don't want to, but nobody reads them. So I'm not going to do anything about that. So that's all I do. I just basically made it a reading exchange because I think that's so important, getting as much feedback, because then you get Spirit to teach you. That's how you get Spirit to teach you, putting yourself in. It's like throwing yourself in the water to swim. You know, it's very, very helpful. I had a radio show. It was on Blog Talk Radio, and I did it for a number of years, maybe 6 years, and it got me to be so much better. And that's how Spirit will train you. So that's the fifth secret, is getting training from Spirit, that not only what I said, the practice, but also asking. When you start to develop, when I started to develop, I'll speak personally, I found that the more attuned to Spirit I became, being able to hear, see, feel, and know Spirit more, the more I was able to ask for things. And it's like the conversation started. And when you ask for help, you'll be given help. You may, like one time in a Voices Across the Veil session, I had a very blocked connection with a sitter. And I had the idea, well, let me ask my guides and the sitter's guides. And I saw them come in and literally unblock and give me more information of what the block was. All this stuff came out, and we were able to shift the sitter to a much more open and relaxed state. And then we were able to go through the discernment. So it's all wonderful. It's wonderful that Spirit is proving itself constantly. It's wonderful to be in a mediumship position where you have the first row to seeing miracles in their active state. I do have a 4-month self-paced training course. You can directly link to that page by going to spiritmediumcoach.com. And I do have a free intro video to all of the 4 classes, courses, actually. Each course has 4 classes in it that I wrote. Okay, so now we can I can come back into the room with you all and just simply be here to discuss some of this with you all. If you have any questions or comments, maybe you've had your own experiences that you want to share.
Thank you, Laura. That's really interesting. You say about the spirits lining up to talk. Now, what is the process? Does this depend, like how they are in line, does this depend on the love they have for the sitter, or for the love that the sitter has for a particular spirit?
There's no one set answer. It's always different. I think it's more what Spirit can do and what Spirit needs to do. So let's say that a father didn't get along with his daughter, and he's the first one that comes in, and the sitter is the daughter. Father's in spirit, you know, and the daughter's sitting there looking at me and going, I want to speak to my father. And you know, I'm in a very awkward position, because I know that if I don't clear that, everybody else is behind him, right? And he may be opening up those other, so I try to woo her into that. So it's just to assume, there's another part of this, another part of the answer is that there are certain souls that are just there longer and are able to communicate better. It's not only a factor of being in spirit a long time that makes them better communicators. It also could be how many lifetimes they've had and where their soul is at in the spiritual development process. So, for example, they may leave Earth and go right up to a higher realm, and they may have a lot of facility and fluidness. Perhaps that soul was a medium when they were on Earth. When they go to spirit realm, they may be good at that. And then some souls that were very material based, everything has to be seen and touched. And some people like that, very grounded, not a bad thing, it's just what they are. They may be harder to bring in from spirit. So it's spirit's agenda, spirit's tools at the moment, spirit's ability. That's how I would look at it.
Um, Hi, very nice presentation. I wanted to ask that when spirit merges, is that totally like unexpected? Because when I was working in a mediumship circle, one-on-one practicing, I was for a moment taken over I was ready to bust out crying. Emotion just came up over me when I was sharing what I felt that the father was feeling, and it was like it happened to me unexpectedly. And then after, and also in the same reading, I had like a hot flash come right through the center of my body. And so this, I wasn't prepared for this to take over my being. So is there a way to balance that, or is it always unpredictable?
I think the answer lies in the more that you work, the more you'll have command over the medium, excuse the pun, meaning the discourse with spirit. So you will just sort of be in more charge. Not that it doesn't happen to me still. I sometimes will be in situations, and it's just my biology a particular day, how I feel physically, how open I am, how the soul is connecting with me, right? That soul may have that specific way of connecting, and they see my tentacles are available for them to make that kind of a connection, which is a form of clairsentience. So there's so many different factors, but most of the very skilled mediums are in command and they are in charge. And it comes through training and experience.
I didn't feel in charge. I mean, it happened to me. I had an experience, and it wasn't negative, but I thought, wow, it was unanticipated for sure.
I think it's beautiful when we can have that, because to me that's so evidential. You're physically feeling it, and that's beautiful. But I have noticed in the platform mediums, they never do that. They are always showing that they are in command of the process. And so I believe, and I have seen it myself, because when I first did, I got some of that, a lot more of that than I get now. Sometimes I still get it, but I tell the soul to please calm it down, okay? And I just pull myself back. But even now, I get overwhelmed sometimes, very overwhelmed. To me, that means I've got a really good connection. Okay? Really good connection. As a matter of fact, the last Voices Across the Veil session, don't know, this is an interesting session. There were 5 sitters. 4 of the 5 had lost a son to suicide, unbeknownst to me or anyone there. And there were certain sitters that I was involved with when the son came in. Oh, it hit me. I think it was one of them. It just hit me. But yeah, it can happen to anybody. It's just I do fully believe that the longer you're doing mediumship, less and less that will happen. The more you'll just sort of ride the wave of everything and be on top of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Thank you for sharing your time and energy with us. I wanted to clarify, when you say I focus, do you mean you're focusing on one specific thing?
Yeah, you know what I try to find? I try to find something that's very minute and detailed, about 2 feet away or 3 feet away, and look at it. Just focus on it and observe all the details.
Okay.
And it's helped my mediumship a lot. Because don't forget, mediumship is is observing, observing what you're hearing, and a very fine vibration. So you really have to be acute. So when I do my exercise now, I add that into my preparation. I find it helps me a lot.
Okay, I'm going to try that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So you could find yourself like a beautiful rose, or you could find yourself something that you have around the house that has a lot of details, pretty, something nice that you like to look at, because it could be a pen, but that's kind of boring. So find something really interesting and just.
I just realized because it brings you into the present moment. Is that why?
It is a form of mindful meditation, but it's a visual one. It seems to work for me. Now, people will do a sensory one where they're focusing on breath, which is fine, but I'm adding in the visual one, and I find it helps me. So I'm just sending that off to you. If it works for you, it works for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, Laura.
Hi,
Yeah.
Susie.
Bit of a practical question. We've been working a lot recently on sticking with the evidence that's brought through, even when you're getting no's. Now, it's a fine line between how far you go with that and when you look at it as being symbolic. Can you sort of speak on those two sides?
That's a great question. And I completely, well, we only have limited time. I'm glad you asked it because it gives me time. It's really hard when you get no's, because I find that the channel closes, the energy portal goes closed and closed and closed. It just closes. It's like talking to somebody at a cocktail party. If you're talking Swahili and they're talking English, they're going to walk away from you. So, you have to find, so what I do is I just say, well, I'm getting this. If you cannot recognize it, that's fine. Maybe it'll make sense later. Let's put it on the side. And then I just go further. So the second part of your question is, what's symbolic, what isn't symbolic? That comes through your own sense as a medium and experience. Like I'll give you an example. I think it was last week I had a sitter, and the first thing that happened is I saw a huge bird. There was a person in spirit who showed me herself clairvoyantly. And in front of herself was a birthday cake, or it was a cake. And she had beautiful cake. I could see the candlelight was lighting her face behind the cake. And she had all these candles around the edge of the cake, and she had one big one in the middle. And I sat there as the medium, and I didn't try to interpret it. I just allowed spirit to cognizantly boost me. In other words, the more you're passive, the more you're going to get. So look at it, you sit there, and you just say, this is what I see. And then all of a sudden it hit me. Oh, that's the anniversary of her passing. Now, there's no rational part of this. It all came in at once. It's a clear cognizant thing. But when you think about it, it made sense. She's got a birthday cake with one on it. So that 1 year would probably mean something to do with an anniversary for her. And it was 1 year. It's just kind of all, and I just jumped on it and went with it. Going with the flow, accepting everything you get, not analyzing too much, reporting like a reporter with a microphone on TV, with the news and everything. Is this what I see? This is what I see. I says, and you may not interpret, you may not get any more. You just say, this is what I see. If you don't get it, that's fine. Let's throw it out. Imagine you're playing the game charades. And the person that you're playing the game with doesn't get your clue. What do? Okay, that's fine. Throw that out. Let's try another one. And spirit will keep giving you things. Sometimes sitters don't get anything. They just can't get it. You may have distorted one thing in 10 things. You may have gotten 10 things right. You get one thing distorted, and they're like, but she wasn't fat. Well, let's review everything else. So, it's working with sitters is a delicate process. And that's why I was going into making them as open as possible, because the more laissez-faire they are, the more relaxed they are, the more they're in their own theta brainwave state. a meditative state, the less analytical they're going to be, the less resistant they're going to be. And the more you're going to be able to get for them, the more they're going to say, well, maybe. They say, maybe, that's fine, you can go on. They keep saying, I don't get it, I don't get it, I don't get it. The only thing I could do is just keep trying to relax them more and move on. That's what I do. I just relax them by assuring them that it might make sense later. Let's put it on the side, no worries, and just moving forward. Tone of voice. As a medium, when you're not getting things correctly, you might check your tone of voice so that you don't sound like you're a little nervous about it. You know what I mean? Because when you're nervous, they get worried. They're going to start getting nervous. So you always have to be very relaxed and very assuring and just move forward. And there's one other thing I want to say about this. Dennis Greger, the researcher I work with, he said to me one thing. He said, don't be concerned about pleasing the sitter. No spirit has shown up. Give what you get. Because he knows spirit's going to show up. And the more I do that, that's again letting spirit take the lead. The easier it's getting. So there's a lot there, with a lot to say about that. It's one of the most difficult aspects of doing mediumship is quite often you could be really correct, but the sitter just doesn't want to accept it or just can't recognize it for whatever reason it is. You know how it is, we could all be looking at the same thing and see different things. Aspect of being a human being, right? So it's part of, it's inherent in the mediumship process that we as mediums will fail from time to time because people see what they want to see and hear what they want to hear. And it's the medium's job to get the sitter seeing what you're seeing, hearing what you're hearing, and part of it is making them meditative, making them believe in you. All of the things I spoke about earlier, so that you can get onto the same page of them saying, oh yeah, and I got chills up my back, that kind of a thing. So it's not an easy answer, really not easy. But I think the one thing that you seem to be kind of agreeing with a lot, what makes sense to you a lot, because your head was going up and down, is no spirit will show up and just behave accordingly.
Yeah. The other thing that we seem to have a lot of problems with is sitters that are trying to be too kind, and you don't really know whether you're on the right ball or not because they're making what you say fit. So just so as they, particularly say with Dem, so as they can, body snatch, for want of a better term. Yeah.
But sometimes they'll give you everything, the whole story, and you're like, okay, so this is what I do. Let's say I give a piece of evidence and I didn't even finish the word, and all of a sudden, and they go into this whole thing. And I'll just say to them, well, thank you so much for, giving me all that information, and you're doing really great, but please only yes, no, or maybe. And then from then on in, I say something, and then I prompt them, yes, no, maybe, so that they don't forget. They're human. I mean, you can't expect a sitter to know what they're doing. They don't realize it. But the other thing here is two things here. One is them giving you too much information. The other one is saying yes when it's really not true. And that I've seen that as well. So let me just think about that for a moment. Sometimes you won't even know. I mean, you may have done the whole reading and it was based on something you thought was correct and they never corrected you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? Another built-in problem or issue. And I try to think of if it's never become a real issue for me. Not that it hasn't happened, but those people tend not to complain too much. So it's just one of those things. As a developing medium, it could be a problem because you think you're doing great when you weren't really doing the right thing at all. But it's just built in. So I would just say it's a collateral damage and not worry about that so much. because the percentage of sitters that will just say everything's right, even if they didn't bother to think about it, it's very small. There's another type of sitter, a sitter that will say yes, but all they meant was, I heard you say that. They didn't mean it was correct.
Yeah.
You ever have that happen? So I'm very careful with that. And I've learned now what the kind of yes it is, or the kind of, the way they say it is, yeah. It's like, yeah, versus yes. So I'll know now if there's a very soft yes or kind of a, I go, is that because you heard what I said? Or is that because it's correct? I will clarify. So your tool is clarifying.
Yeah, if I get a weak yes, I've been more or less trained to say that's really a no, isn't it? And 90% of the time you will get correct, it's a no, yeah, because you've made them sort of really think about it and they're just trying to make it fit. Thank you.
Yeah.
When you first started with Voices Across the Veil, was it difficult doing readings online? I know it was before a lot of people were doing readings online. I think you were one of the earlier ones.
Yeah.
If any of our people are hesitant about doing readings online, what advice would you give them?
Well, I started doing my own radio show on Blog Talk Radio. So it was internet based, right? So I was doing mediumship and personal readings on the spot. So I started getting facility, but I never found it different. I never found it different from in person. As a matter of fact, I prefer virtual settings for my readings, like Zoom. I have clients all over the world, Zoom or Skype or phone. In person, I feel like they're distracting me. I've gotten so much into the virtual world, but the physical presence of somebody sometimes drains me or takes away from, distracts me. So to say how it is, I don't understand. To me, and how do I say this? I had a person when I first started out with this who said she was a psychic. I met her in some fun little thing, new age kind of networking thing. And she wanted to hold my hand to do the reading. And I was like, what do you need to hold my hand for? Okay. It's energy. So I just would say if somebody's afraid of doing that, to just do a lot of phone readings and or get a radio show or whatever. It's really not any different. Really not any different. It's energy.
Does the strength of the ability or the gift to do a reading temper if you're not doing readings like if you miss a week, does it cool off? Or as long as you're sitting in the power, then that kind of retains the energy so that you would be able to connect with spirit easily? Like if you took a month off, would that ability cool off? And then you'd have to reestablish the connection? How does that work?
It's a great question. I've seen it both ways. Go back to, what's his name? James Van Praagh. I heard him try to do some mediumship on his radio show on Hay House Radio, maybe 2 years ago. And he hadn't been doing readings for a while. And he said, I'm rusty. So I got in my head then that you have to constantly be doing readings to be good at them. And so then I started complaining to Dennis, the researcher I work with. He says, no, he says, he was giving me a mindset. He says, think of it like riding a bicycle. So think of it like riding a bicycle. And in my experience, when I was less developed, I needed to keep working. Then I got to a certain level and I could just not work for a little while and still come right back. Now, have I not worked for a long period of time? Maybe a week or two, but not longer than that. So I haven't tested it. So I think if you're going to go into months and years, it would definitely, you just like riding a bike, it'd come back, but you need to get a little bit better at it.
Do you have one, and for lack of better coining term, trick of the trade to boost you? Is there something that you can do to boost you, or is there a favorite meditation that you can do that you really know that steps it up a couple of levels?
Yeah, as I was mentioning earlier, well, I didn't mention the meditation, but we have to do a meditation. Every medium should. You know, you need to have a technique for going to alpha, deep alpha, low theta if you can, and be in a waking state. Mine is, I like the ocean sounds. It works for me, really, really zones me. And I added to that staring at, after I'm done with that for a while, then like a couple of minutes before I start the work, I will stare at a beautiful object that has details and, you know, just tune into that. It helps me a lot. But of course, there's many different ways you can use the hemisync. I haven't tried that. I find the ocean sounds work really well for me.
Thank you.
Laura, could you tell us a little bit more about your course? Who is it designed for?
It's okay. There's 4 different modules or courses. The first one could be useful to anyone, even though it's the first one. And that is basically aligning with your own intuition in terms of a soul dialogue. And that's to better your life and to put you on point for your purpose and stop fighting who you really are. So that's the first course, but it is intuitive building. Second course is channeling. Somebody's channeling already, probably wouldn't need it. Third course is psychic clairvoyance, or I call psychic creativity. In there, I have new things that Spirit taught me that might be novel to you because Spirit didn't happen to teach you those things. You have your own things, and so you may get some information you didn't have before. One of which is when I first started. But when I was working with clients, suddenly I'd see an aura around them. And then Spirit used a system of the aura to show me relationships and history of the sitter. I also was revealed a chakra therapy system for healing at a soul or Akashic level. So that's in there as well. So those are kind of advanced, and it's very dense, a lot of stuff. The mediumship, if you've been working as a medium, it's kind of basic. And the other thing that I would add is I'm very organized. I like to be organized. This work requires you to be very organized, very precise in everything you do. You don't want to just show up in a drunken stupor, you know what I mean? So I have a system of steps, and I call them the love steps, LOVE. And that's in every single course applied a different way. But basically, it's what you're already doing as a medium. It's in every type of course. I just organized it into this acronym with the specific steps.
Now, what do you do with people who come along wanting psychic? They come along, they book you, but they're really wanting a psychic reading. They're wanting to know, who am I going to meet my loved one? Am I going to get a new job? Am I going to survive this recession? All that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, after a while, you start to realize, I know when they're booking it, that they want me to make a connection with their grandma or someone because they want advice about their life. That's a psychic reading. But I will ask them. I'll say, is it because you want to speak with your grandma because you really need her advice? And I will try to make that connection if the sitter really wants to get advice from the consciousness of the grandmother. I'll try to do it. But also another way in other words, I'm using a spectrum of my own sense, what I think is needed here. It's like an intuitive thing on my part. So sometimes I'll know they really want a psychic reading. I could just tell. And so I would say, well, what's your priority? Connect with grandma or to learn about your own life? What's your priority today? We'll start with that. And then that's how I do it.
So you do psychic readings as well as mediumship?
Well, for me, everything is a form of mediumship because I'm a channel and I bring in guides.
Right.
Right. And everything's worked through the guides.
Now, I have a couple of questions about channeling. I'm always curious about people who claim to be able to channel a particular person for like an hour and a half. Whereas in mediumship, you're playing, as you say, you're playing charades.
Right.
is it, are you talking, is it accurate when people are channeling a particular person for so long?
Well, okay, that's a very good good thing to look at. When I do mediumship, if I get a very close connection, highly accurate, defined by physical things about the person, then usually they'll move to a vocal connection and they will start talking through me. I don't succumb to their, total thing, but I hear them clairaudiently. And I will, repeat to the sitter, well, he just said this. That is a type of evidence as well, if it is evidence. If it's just whatever, then it's not evidence. And then we can say maybe we should be a little bit skeptical about it. But if it's evidence, it doesn't matter if the form of delivery is a channeled message or if it's I see, feel, or hear this or that. I don't look at one method more valid than another, so long as it is evidence. Well, the word channeling, okay, there's a lot of channels out there, and the word channeling to me means the delivery, the way it's delivered. It's a clairaudient facility. You could be channeling, Buddha, but how do you know you have Buddha there? Or you could be channeling Abraham or whatever it is you're channeling. And how do you know? So if you can't check out anything, then I would definitely wonder about that. But sometimes where channeling is definitely tapping into information. Like when I sit with a client, the first thing I do is channel their guides. And there's credibility there because when I'm done, the sitter will say, how did you do that? Because everything was correct. I had no idea. None. So I'm allowing the guys to speak through me. I go into a passive state. I'm semi-conscious, I'm conscious, but they speak through me and they give a message, and it's all about what's going on in that person's life before I know what it is. Is it 100% accurate 100% of the time? No, it's about 98% accurate. There's sometimes when the sitter is difficult, like I said, they're not open, or they're just very, very cynical about all of it, or skeptical or whatever, and they're harder to read, but that's true of all aspects of psychic work. So there's a lot to be said about channeling, and being a person who has experienced channeling, I feel saddened by that, but I also feel saddened by the misunderstanding of psychic work. In the regular person's world, the 3D world, you tell somebody you're a psychic, you might as well tell them you're psycho. So there's a lot of that stuff going on. So there's a lot to be said about the channeling phenomena, the channeling methodology, what it is, what it isn't. And the only thing I can say is if it's not pulling in evidence that can be validated in some way, then I would definitely be suspicious.
So what I was wondering, so I heard a lot of different mediums come out with lots of different things. So some say regular meditation is absolutely essential and it's the be all, the end all, and you must do it in order to be a medium. Others say, no, I never meditate, I just go and do the thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how is it for you? How do you feel like there is preparatory work needed, whether it's meditation or whether it takes some other form for you? Or do you feel like it's a muscle and it's just sort of, how to switch into that mode of working?
It depends. Okay, there's a lot to this answer. Some people probably be naturally in a more relaxed state. They're just naturally in a maybe high alpha state or something. They're just more relaxed. So maybe they can do it. Other people, when they're in beta mindset, in a very fast day-to-day mindset, you know what I mean when I say beta? Okay, so they're like, here and now. It's harder for them to switch without meditation. So I think part of the answer depends on who's doing the work. But I also have to say that no matter who it is, if they were to take up meditation, it would improve their work. Like I was doing pretty good work just listening to ocean sounds, okay? But now I added in eye focus and it's getting better. So yeah, so it all depends on the medium, depends on the psychic, but everybody would improve with some form of clearing the mind and centering and focusing. And again, that can be different from person to person, how they do it. So the type of meditation, but we'll use the term meditation for lack of a better term. I also want to say one other thing. Meditation doesn't have to take a long time. One of the things I wanted to do, part of my secrets, and when I open a sitter, I didn't say this yet, is I wanted to learn, is there a way to go fast into theta brainwave state? So I Googled it. Lo and behold, I found out that if you breathe from your abdomen, it will take you to theta within seconds. Do a little Google on it. And I use it with all my clients. And I also now start to use it because I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night like this, and then I can't fall back to sleep again. So I started doing abdominal breathing in my bed while I'm trying to fall back to sleep, and bam, I go right back to sleep. I hope it lasts. I hope it lasts. But so it doesn't have to take a long time, and maybe you could do a little research on quick ways to go to theta.
Laura, time is up, unfortunately. Thank you so much for giving us your valuable time. Well, you've given us so many really valuable suggestions. Sherry, could I get you to thank Laura, please? Because I know you got a lot out of the session.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Laura. And I definitely did get a lot out of the session and learned a lot of solid information to apply to my practice. It just truly was a gift. I thank you so much for spending your evening with us.
Thank you. And I want to say one last thing to everybody. Mediumship is not easy. Anybody thinks it's easy? It's not. And it's a big responsibility because you're working with people's lives. So
Yeah.
the more we share, the more we develop, all of us, the better we're serving the public. Because I really sometimes think, well, why can't I just go off and start another Tesla? Or, you know, it might be, you know, certainly have big rewards financially. Not that I could even, but we're all made with certain gifts. So we have to do what our gifts are. And if this is your gift, then you're in service, baby. It ain't always easy, but we love every moment of it, right?